all starts. So my co-founder, when we divided the level of work, who was doing what work, the job that she took on was to do the technology piece. And she was going to do technology and the car leasing, and I was going to do everything else. So it turned out that the technology, she's not an engineer, but she was a resident advisor at MIT, like the house parent. So she wasn't an engineer, and the first set of engineers she brought in, this was the first chunk of our money, and we went out to see the prototype that they put onto my car. This engineer, it was this device that was on this piece of plywood with all these cords going everywhere, these wires, and this big ugly thing. And he was sitting in the driver's seat, and I looked at the device, and I looked at him, and he could tell. I was so horrified, and he never billed me for 6 weeks of work because it was such a disaster. Then she hired 2 more engineers. They didn't work out. And I have to say, I can't blame her because she had no engineering background. And so here's where you get to your secret weapons. And my secret weapon was that my husband was an engineer from MIT. And so he became the kitchen cabinet, and he went from being the kitchen cabinet to being the chief technology officer for SIPCAR for the last 6.5 years. And he built and designed and ran the R&D. But I will say, we made, it was definitely harder, and we made mistakes, but we really caught our mistakes fast. And that was a nice piece of doing a startup versus a big company, when people would tell me, well, aren't you afraid about when Hertz is going to come into the market and kill you? And I say, I was afraid of Hertz coming into the market. But my response was, this technology is so complicated, and it wasn't the technology so much as the users, that people would have their card, and there would be a husband and wife, and the husband would come in with one card, and then the wife, and he would get out, and then the wife would be driving the car, and could the cards work? Or someone would leave their purse in the car and shut the door. It would be a 4-story garage underneath. What would happen to the signal? Or it would be, the power would die. Like, there's all these issues, and I think you couldn't have even smart engineers sitting around thinking of this problem, couldn't come up with a number of ways that users can make things broken. And so it took real-world experience, one by one, on a small group of users, as we grew our customer base, 50, 100, 200, 500,000, that Hertz could never do that. They could never run an experiment because they're too big a company. So back to this ATM example, imagine if you thought of a brand new great ATM method, you could never put it in place because everyone knows how to use an ATM and to retrain them. So anyway, you needed that to happen. So we were able to take advantage of being small and fast, finding mistakes, and quickly reiterating them. I was talking to an insurance company just now about a device. They're going to charge $10 an hour. They were going to charge insurance by the mile, and I was talking to this executive, and he was telling me, well, it's taken us 10 years to build this piece of technology that we put into cars at a low price point to charge insurance by the mile. And I said, I personally built that in 6 months at Zipcar. And he said, that's impossible, you never could have done that. We had all our best engineers on, it's taken us 10 years. And I said, my business model, my revenue is based on per mile, so I can tell you, I definitely had it. So with the right engineers, firing people, which is like the worst possible thing about doing a startup. So as I say, finding problems, fixing them fast, but lots of problems. Are we done? Yes.
Before starting this, what were you doing? Some job or you doing some other business?
Wait, no one else talk. What was the...
What was your occupation or what was your profession before starting?
What was my profession before I started Zipcar? I felt truly that every life experience I'd had from when I was 12 until I was 42 when I started that company, or 41, came into play. That those disgusting jobs I'd had when I had been the accountant when I was 19 and had to do icky bookkeeping, and the one when I had to do, systems management on computers I knew nothing about, and the marketing brochures I had written, all of those, when you do a startup, every single element of your life experience comes to play because there's only you and one other person, you and 2 other people, you and 5 5 others. So it's every little scrap of experience that you had. I've been a consultant in this realm for years, and I do think, to this Harvard Business School case, that first day when it was taught, the professor had on the board the big blackboards. And on this side she said, why not invest in Zipcar? Yes, no. And then the students were supposed to say all the reasons you would invest and all the reasons you would not invest. The reasons you would not invest was like the whole thing. The reasons you would invest was 2. And I look at it, I thought, of course you would invest in Robin. And so one of the questions was, why would you invest in Robin Chase? She had never done a company before. She knew nothing about cars. She wasn't an engineer. And I looked at that and I thought, cars and fleet management, everybody has fleets. Universities have fleets, police have fleets, governments, highways, that's a commodity. I don't need to know about fleets, I'll hire that. And how good is Robin Chase? Well, I've been, in my life, always beloved by my bosses and always hired from one job to the other, brought along. I think if you look at my track record, you should know, but they thought, she doesn't know this business. So it was as I say, it was everything I ever did in my entire life pulled together, and the ability to hire what you don't know. Because bringing in the engineering was critical, and the car guys. Yes.
Should we not build a collaborative network of people worry about investment anymore?
You're thinking you have your car that you lend to your friends, and you have Zipcar that brings the car asset and you rent out. And then the obvious thing is, just like the beds, to have a car sharing organization where people put their own cars into it. Indeed, I'm trying to build that company just now. It's the next step. So, yes.
Which personal skill set do you think is necessary to succeed? And secondly, what personality traits, in your opinion, are the most influential in the success of a venture?
Model and the feedback and make changes. I tell people that when you're first starting your business, you talk to your friends and you talk to your mom and you talk to people who actually know something, and each one of these people you can consider to be your consultant if you listen well. So when your mom says, when your mom misunderstands what you're saying, you're thinking, Mom, how stupid are you? I just said to you, why are you misunderstanding? Instead, you need to reflect back on yourself and say, well, clearly I did a really terrible job describing it. Or when a business person asks you, Robin, so how many hours a day do these cars need to be rented to break even? I should absolutely know the answer to the question, and the fact that I didn't means I've done a crummy job and I need to write that question down and answer it. So this intellectual honesty of when you're starting a company, you are saying very positive things to everyone. You're saying, invest in me, it's great, work for me even though I have no money, sell me my inputs even though I have no track record, so you're constantly selling. In your brain, you have to be so on top of what the reality is and what your skills are. And I started Zipcar with a peer group of about 10 CEOs that I would meet at all sorts of events, and they were all starting their companies. And I would listen to their business models and their ideas, and in my mind, quietly to myself, I'm thinking, wow, that is like the stupidest thing I ever heard. That's a really bad idea. But entrepreneurs are told, and then when a year later, I was the only CEO left standing. That those other guys did have crummy ideas, and they did fail. So I want to say there's intellectual honesty around your concept and your model. But I feel like I need to temper this because people said to me, 1,000 of them said to me, Robin, Zipcar's a really dumb idea. It's never going to work in the US. I don't get it. It's, stupid idea. So you've got to have this balance in your head of listening clearly to what people have to say and making the right decision. Because I think, and I've started companies that I didn't like, and I cut them as quickly as I could. So there's this balance. And then, of course, perseverance, the ability to work around